Taiwan. I'm Ethan Liu with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's premier has had strong words for the record spending cuts approved by the opposition-controlled legislature, calling them suicidal.
我们会依照这个条文来进行我们的后续救济行为，因为面对这种无差别的攻击，我们没有办法说自杀式的删减。
Taiwan's opposition coalition voted to cut around $6 billion from the government's 2025 budget, including nearly $2 billion on defense. They argue that the cut is necessary to eliminate wasteful spending. But the premier says the cuts may mean some agencies could be forced to cut back or even terminate services. Taiwan's legislature has been fighting over more than just the country's budget. Starting early last year, legislators sprawled over bills on the power to investigate the executive branch and reforming the constitutional court. For more on the current political landscape, Alan McDonald spoke to Karis Templeman, research fellow at the Hoover Institution.
Karis, in your last article, you mentioned that Taiwan might be entering a period of constitutional crises. Could you explain a little bit about what you mean by this term?
Well, so the most imminent problem is that the Constitutional Court right now in Taiwan does not have a full membership. So there are only 8 justices of the 15 in the court who hold office right now. And the crisis is that the legislature just passed a bill requiring a quorum of at least 10 justices to meet to hear any sort of challenges to laws based on their constitutionality. So we're in a position where the court can't actually rule on anything that the legislature does now. And despite that, the executive branch has asked the court to go ahead and rule on the constitutionality of the law that makes it impossible for them to rule on constitutionality of laws. So we're kind of caught in a limbo here. And so the court could decide that they have the right to review this law anyway, and then the legislature, I imagine, will probably react in a very harsh way towards the court.
Critics of this bill have stated that the KMT and TPP are politicizing the Constitutional Court by punishing them for rulings against bills which those two parties earlier favored. Can you talk a little bit about this political division right now?
Yeah, I think there's some deeply problematic aspects to the decision to raise the threshold for a valid court decision. The timing is obviously suspicious. The introduction of the raising of the threshold of that bill, it actually occurred right after the court narrowed the scope of Taiwan's death penalty. And that was a perfectly valid thing for the court to do. There's another way you could have designed this law if you weren't trying to punish the court, which is to say this will take effect in 2 years from now, right? And that will give us time to seat new justices. The current ability of the court to actually function won't be affected in the near term. But the opposition chose, I think, to take a more confrontational approach, and I don't think you can read it any other way. I think this was retaliatory against the court, and I think that is, unfortunately, a pretty direct attack on judicial independence in Taiwan.
One of the other key points of tension is the formation of the budget, which has seen key portions slashed. Can you talk a little bit about how this plays into current political tensions inside the legislature?
Let me start with the observation that the legislature does have the legal power to freeze or cut budgets. And that's really the one kind of clear constitutional authority they have over the executive branch. I actually think I fault the Lai administration and President Lai himself for not recognizing the new political dynamic that is now in Taiwan, the new facts on the ground. If you don't have a majority in the legislature, you got to talk to the opposition, right? So I've criticized the DPP, now let me criticize the opposition as well. The cuts that they've made have just been vindictive. There hasn't been a kind of clear rationale for going after certain parts of the government other than there are agencies that they just don't like, and they want to send a message to the DPP.
There was Karis Templeman, research fellow at the Hoover Institution. A retired Taiwanese lieutenant general has been indicted on espionage charges. He's the highest-ranking veteran to be charged with spying for China. As Chris Gorin reports, it adds to the growing list of espionage cases involving the country's retired men and women in uniform.
在我们台湾还有遗嘱啊，祈求和平、反战争、要求统一的民意实践。
This is retired Taiwanese Lieutenant General Gao Anguo. He's now the highest-ranking retired serviceman Taiwan has indicted for spying for China. Prosecutors have charged Gao and 5 others with violating the National Security Act. It's the latest in a growing number of espionage cases involving retired military personnel. Prosecutors say that Gao formed a group promoting unification with China, and that Beijing paid nearly $300,000 US for tasks such as using drones to identify possible invasion sites on Taiwan's northern coast. The group allegedly even promised armed support to China if it were to invade.
那些企图制造分裂、阻挡统一的势力啊，无论内外，注定将在这股不可逆的洪流中被淹没。
Gao has made no secret of his support for Taiwan's unification with China, often posting pro-unification commentary on his YouTube channel. But for his concrete actions to assist in unification, prosecutors are seeking a sentence of 10 years in prison. It's the second case to be made public in as many weeks. Earlier this month, an indictment was made public against retired military veteran and politician Chu Hongyi. Prosecutors also charged him with carrying out reconnaissance for China, including on the unofficial U.S. embassy in Taipei. He was also allegedly assembling teams to carry out attacks during a Chinese invasion. Taiwan's defense ministry says the impacts of these 2 cases are limited.
目前并没有现役官兵的涉案，也没有重大的国防机密资讯泄露的一个状况。
Prosecutors declined to comment to TaiwanPlus on whether the 2 cases are connected. It's unclear whether such cases, which have much in common, are part of a coordinated effort by China. But with so many cases involving the country's veterans now coming to light, many here are naturally concerned. Klein Wong and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
On January 23, 2020, Wuhan, China became the first city in the world to enter strict lockdown over the spread of the deadly coronavirus. 5 years later, Wuhan's residents and officials are hoping to move on. Harrell Hughes reports.
On the outskirts of Wuhan, China, sits a relic of the COVID-19 pandemic, an emergency field hospital, once a symbol of China's fight against the deadly virus, now empty, boarded up, and forgotten.
我感觉是往前走了，就是这样的记忆就是越来越模糊了，然后感觉，但是还是会受到这样的影响，就会觉得这几年过得比较艰难，会有像这样的印象，但是新的生活还是开始了，我觉得是这样。
5 years ago, Wuhan's doctors flagged a SARS-like virus spreading throughout the city, traced to a local market. Within weeks, the city's population of 20 million found themselves at the epicenter of a deadly health crisis, with a virus that spread across the world, killing at least 7 million people and infecting over 700 million. On January 23, 2020, the city was the first in the world to go into lockdown, sealing itself off for 76 days. The rest of China followed in a strict zero-COVID lockdown that lasted for 2 years, the effects of which are not so easily forgotten.
就是生活上来说，大家可能或多或少那种焦虑不安，我觉得这是一个很多人的一个常态，然后以及他这个心理变化的一个过程，对，就是都会感觉到很焦虑。
5 years later, and the streets of Wuhan are no longer desolate, as the city is once again bustling with life.
然后包括我现在，其实大家对武汉的关注也越来越多，对，然后说武汉是个英雄城市嘛，然后包括现在这几年来武汉的旅游的也越来越多了。
The city's only public commemoration of the pandemic sits next to the abandoned hospital on the outskirts of the city. A series of photos dot the wall of a nearby petrol station. faded, and forgotten, just like the rest of all traces of the pandemic in Wuhan, as residents and officials look ahead. Eason Chen and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Same-sex couples in Thailand's capital, Bangkok, have taken part in the mass wedding on the first day. Marriage equality becomes the law of the land. And ahead of the historic day, LGBTQ+ couples share their experiences and hopes for the future. Wesley Lewis reports.
A historic day for Thailand's LGBTQ+ community, as marriage equality comes into effect. Hundreds of couples in Bangkok tied the knot in a mass ceremony held at a popular shopping mall, a landmark event filled with joy.
รู้สึกปลดล็อกหลายๆอย่างค่ะแล้วก็รู้สึกว่าคำว่าครอบครัวของเรามันสมบูรณ์มากยิ่งขึ้นค่ะก็รู้สึกดีใจแล้วก็มันเป็นสิ่งที่แบบว่าเหมือนกับเรามันความหวังที่เราได้รับอ่ะเหมือนกับถ้าเมื่อเราอยากกินของอะไรเราอยากได้อะไรเรามันคือความอย่างนั้นครับ
4 months ago, Thailand's parliament voted to pass the marriage equality bill, making the country the first in Southeast Asia to recognize same-sex marriages, and the third in the wider region after Taiwan and Nepal. The bill replaces all references of men and women with partner and grants same-sex couples the same legal rights as heterosexual couples. For Thai transgender woman Arya Jin Milantanapa and her American husband, Lee Ronald Batiata, marriage equality is long overdue. They have been together for over 2 decades and are raising a son from Lee's previous marriage and another son who is in Jin's custody. Ahead of their wedding, they expressed hope for their family's future.
Now we have kids, and this marriage license can lead us to both party for guardian for the kids.
Just outside Bangkok, lesbian couple Carissa Fa Loivisut and Nirman Nu Kun Kao live together in their 2-story townhouse. It is difficult for unmarried couples in Thailand to buy property together, so the deed is only in Fa's name. But that can change after they're legally married.
นิวช่วยผ่อนซึ่งในความเป็นจริงอ่ะนิวช่วยผ่อนนิวก็มีสิทธิ์ที่ควรจะได้มันถ้าสมมติว่ายังไม่มีพรบตรงนี้มันก็เท่ากับว่าสิ่งที่นิวผ่อนไปมันเสียเปล่าเลยนะถ้าฟ้าเกิดเป็นอะไรขึ้นมานิวก็ควรจะมีสิทธิ์ตามกฎหมายที่จะได้ในสิ่งที่เขาผ่อนมา
Now also getting hitched officially, one of the country's most high-profile gay couples, actors Sabanyu Arm Panakul and Apiwat Porsche Apiwat Seri, known for their appearances in popular LGBT-themed TV series, known as BLs. They held their own ceremony just days ago before the law took effect. Over a decade ago, they received online backlash after the video of their proposal went viral. They say although the new marriage law coming into effect is a major milestone in Thai society, the fight for equality is not over yet.
อยากใช้คำว่าเป็นจุดเริ่มต้นของสิทธิที่พวกเราในฐานะของคนชายขอบได้รับเป็นสิทธิ์แรกๆแต่มันก็ยังไม่สิ้นสุดมันยังมีสิทธิ์อื่นๆไปอีกมันยังมีโอกาส
The couple says discrimination persists, and they will continue to advocate for more anti-discrimination legislation. Among the issues still on the table, transgender rights activists are calling on the government to allow trans individuals to legally change their gender identities. And while there is still much work to be done to further ensure their equal rights, on this momentous day in Bangkok, LGBTQ+ couples are celebrating a hard-fought step forward with a grand display of love and community. Patrick Chen and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
In sports news, a teenage Taiwanese pitcher is heading to the U.S. to join the major leagues. 18-year-old Yang Nianxi has signed for the San Francisco Giants for $500,000. Giant scouts had their eye on Yang because of his fastball, clocking in at up to 150 kilometers an hour. 2 other young Taiwanese pitchers signed MLB contracts last year. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, we leave you with images of Guangzhou's Giant Panda Cub, Mei Zhu, enjoying festive treats in the run-up to the Lunar New Year. I'm Ethan Liu. Take care, and I'll see you next time.